sometimes it just feels natural to do it, like mid song or whatever. So, no, like anyone that can't do it can like, try to talk shit like, oh, what a show off. But it's like, dude, it's like a part of the mosh for the people that can do it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure Podcast. We get the blessed opportunity to talk to the one, the only Strangle God, Kamen of Strangle You. Thanks for jumping on the show with me, my guy.
That was a cool greeting. Thank you for having me.
Do you get like, I know very few people that have their IG name to really tie to their band stuff. Was the IG name, we're getting right into the questions here, but
cool.
Was the IG name, did that come first or did the band come first?
The band came first. Actually, fun fact, originally I wanted to name the band Don't Care.
Okay.
And I wanted our first demo to have a cover of Think I Care, because I love Think I Care.
Of course.
And I was like, yo, I'm totally going to make my username Kamen Don't Care. And then guitarist at the time, Josh, who wrote all the music so far that you've heard, he was like, I don't like it. I was like, what? All right. So I thought Wring Your Neck. And I was like, I don't really try to portray myself as a tough guy, because I'm actually not a tough guy. Like, I'll fight if I have to, but I was like, Wring Your Neck seems too tough. And then I was like, but that's an option, or we could call it, I don't know, Strangle You, which sounds more unhinged.
Sure.
And him and Jacob in Tulsa, Jacob Scott, the other guitarist, they were both like, yeah, let's go with that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I was like, I don't want to name the intro Strangle You whenever we write that. I was like, we'll call it Wring Your Neck. So the intro here,
everything connects.
It all connects.
It's it's like Wring Your Neck and then like the synonyms category, and then you're like, oh, Strangle You, that will work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's really funny about Strangle God is, for one, a lot of times people, they'll tag me when they're making a post that has to do with us. And I'm like, but it's like they think they tagged the band. I'm like, hey, that was,
You were so close.
Me.
So close.
Like, oh, shit, But it's funny because I was like, everyone's username's got to be something to do with their personality. So not always, but sometimes.
Yeah.
But at that time, I was dealing with how angry I was with my childhood and everything. So, and I wrote this song "Mad at God," which is on the first EP. So I was just like, Strangle God. That's funny.
So. Yeah, it's we're off to the races when it comes to the lore of Strangle You and all the different things in that place.
Yeah,
but I love it.
I feel it's funny. I feel like if someone wants to talk to me about my band, I feel like I come off like a huge punisher, because I'm so stoked to finally get to do this, because I've played like drums in bands before, but I never got to do vocals, and I've always wanted to, which I'm glad it took me so long, because I don't think my lyrics are amazing, but they used to have no structure or anything when I was like younger.
Sure.
And it's like I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about at all. I would just kind of throw something and see if it stuck, and it didn't. But the older I got, a little wiser, and then this worked out. So,
yeah. Well, don't beat yourself too much, because I do think that your vocals and what you're doing lyrically with Strangle You is definitely fucks, and hence wanting to have you on the show. We're skipping over the order of a couple of things, because normally I like to give a little bit of context about why I'm having the guest that I am on the show. And obviously coming off of Promcore, There was so many sick bands. Your guys' set on like the side stage kind of area was definitely one of my favorites. And originally I found out about Strangle You because Endgame did our split with Living in Fear, and Curtis had like was playing drums, and so I was like, yeah, this is my other band. And I was like, oh, this is like the opposite as far as like riffs and craziness and
Yeah.
some of those things, but it's sick. And I think the vocals in Strangle You really add like a certain special layer to the overall mix of things versus just being like another hardcore band or another punk hardcore band. So
Appreciate
we're
that.
definitely going to get into that. But before we get into like the music chats and all that good stuff, we have to check some bevs standard here on the show. So
Of
tell me what
course.
you're going to be drinking on the ep today.
So some people's gonna kill me, but a bottled water. I try to drink a gallon a day, and the only way I can keep track is if I'm doing it with it. I don't know why. I had a steel container for a while.
Hmm.
It's a half a gallon, but I just won't drink out of it. So I keep my count with 8 bottles a day.
Okay.
I can
So
manage with.
it's more about just like here's this giant mountain versus like here's a bunch of different like little hills that
Yeah,
I can. Yeah,
yeah.
I got
By the
you.
time I
Okay.
get to the coffee shop every morning, I gotta have at least 1.5 bottles, like, out of the
To
way.
balance things out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I got you.
And my coffee shop is closed by the time I could get back to it for the day for my second time. But I went to Gong Cha and I got a coffee milk tea. It's a
Mm.
banger
With the bobas, it looks like.
with the bobas.
Do
Light ice.
light ice.
It's gonna get cold. Like light ice was gonna do the job. So
Hmm. Are you big on the bobas for those kind of drinks?
I feel like a fucking child, but yeah, I'll be like giggling. Yeah, bro. I'll be like, so
The
yeah.
first I think I've told this story once on the podcast, but the very first time I was introduced to bubble tea was not like, "Hey, here's this drink, try it out." It's like, "Hey, look what I can do." And the guy would like get the bobas and shoot them at like people across like the parking lot at my school. And I was
That's
like, I think that was a poor introduction because I've had bubble tea now and it's like, okay, I understand that. But at the time, I'm like, oh, this is just a joke drink. Like it's just used as like a way to like pester your friends versus like, oh, it's delicious.
that's I can see the vision.
Makes sense. Checks out.
But
So I know that there's going to be a couple people that are going to be checking out this podcast because you're on it, and I think this is more of just like a funny Spencer Bev lore thing. So I'm going to be drinking dun, 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 the brand new Red Bull summer flavor that's only available in Canada right now.
okay, that's a flex.
It's a bit of a flex. It's the apricot strawberry flavor.
So if I'm in Canada, I'll try it, but I'm not an energy drink guy at all.
Okay.
I don't understand. I'm just like it's like an adult soda, but I don't like soda either.
Mm.
I don't dislike soda. Look, if Pepsi Blue came back, I'd go for it. But I haven't. I just that was one thing I could. I have a horrible diet. I eat like shit. But I can sacrifice some things, and I'm
Mhm.
like soda. Let's sacrifice that.
Yeah.
So I cut that out in like 2016.
Oh, okay. So like pretty recently in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of your entire life.
Yeah, but I
Mm.
mean, I say that, but I still have lattes and cappuccinos like every day. So I don't really think there's too much benefit for me there.
Mhm. Is the anti energy drink vibe more of like I had a bad experience with one in the past, or it just never really hit your radar?
I was just like, I'm gonna get fat if I don't straighten up. I'm not gonna straighten up. There's some things I can just kick out of my diet,
Yeah.
and soda's one of them. Like if you really think about it, if you go to get like a meal like wherever, everyone's like, "Oh, I'll take a soda with mine." I'm just like, "Let's do a water," and then I'm not bored.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I think
if
it's
I'm
like
good, I'm bored.
I think things have changed since I've been such a bev connoisseur. Before we keep chatting, we have to cheers. You know,
Cheers.
cheers to you, buddy. Stoked to do this.
Appreciate it. You as well. I'm stoked to do this as well.
Hmm. But to your point, I do think that like my I was always like the person drinking water. I never liked the caffeine, the bubbles, like the syrupiness of like a Coke, a Pepsi, even like things like iced tea would just trip me out. And I think it was only over time where it's like, okay, there's a time and place for these things. and it's okay not to get a Coke or a Pepsi or a root
Sure.
beer. There's other things that will suffice that. This was more of a flex than like I need a Red Bull, if
Yeah.
anything. So I don't feel bad for all my American friends who were like, it's not fair. It's like you guys had pomegranate and it never came up here. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we got a lot of things y'all don't have, so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's like, the ratios are totally off. So let me have this one thing.
I'm gonna let you.
Okay. Thanks, Kamen. Thank you, Strangle God. So dude, really stoked to chat with you. I know Strangle you just put out like a longer EP, if you want to call it that, shorter album.
Best way to put it, yeah.
Sure. And the only solution, jammed it a couple times before we were on it. And I think that there was like a couple songs that were previous release that were on it. So it was good to see those kind of returning. But before we talk about that release, let's get a little bit of context from you about like your heavy music or DIY music origin story. Take us like way back in time to the first time you either heard that on like a soundtrack, like
Yeah,
a random tape in your in someone's truck or whatever it is. Just
yeah.
break it down and paint the picture for me.
Um, so a lot of people in this, I don't know about everywhere, but in the South, a lot of people started going to shows because like churches were having like all these metalcore shows.
Mhm.
Um, metalcore that doesn't age well, mind you. Not all metalcore. I'm saying you know what kind I'm talking about, the kind that
Yes.
we don't fucking remember those bands' names now. But yeah, it was like seventh grade. Everyone kept talking about the Fish, which was like our church was called the Interchange in Alabama because I'm from there. Roll Tide. Not really. I don't actually watch sports, but if I did, uh, so we had a skate park we went to on Mondays and Wednesdays and Friday and Saturdays. Some Saturdays, not every Saturday, they would have shows, and they titled like that part of the venue "The Fish,"
Mm.
and I was just like, all my friends talking about it, so I was like, yeah, why not? Let's go to this. So me and my cousin went, and it was fun as shit. Went and like I don't know, I saw like some moshing, and I was like, oh, that's crazy, and then kept going and never remembered a single band until finally a couple of the locals I would learn to know by name. There was one called like Without Regret, which turned to Take This a Name, and it was like a chick that was like this like awesome skater punk, and everyone had a crush on her, but she was like fucking baller on the mic, and I was like, that's fucking cool. Wow. It was like, it's fucking in middle school, it's foreign to see like that.
Yes.
Um,
Well, especially like the time, because what year would that have been? Like
that
late
was shit,
2010s?
2007,
Oh, yeah.
2008.
Yeah.
There was that band. There was this other band that to this day I will go and listen to called Dead Man in Reno. They were so good. I don't know how they're not huge to this day,
Hmm.
but they were fucking sick. But anyways, like ninth grade, everyone was talking about hardcore. There was this venue in Birmingham called Cave Nine. I never got to go, but like anyone that's ever been to or played a show there, like would be like, "Yo, Cave Nine was the place." Everyone hyped it up. But I got into hardcore like right as I moved to Georgia. But I still there was a deal with my dad and my mom that I would get to go visit Alabama every other weekend. So we kept that up. But Cave Nine had closed by that point. But
Mm.
right before I moved, it's still freshman year of high school for me. Someone had a burned CD, like a mix CD of like it had like Kids Like Us, Shipwreck, Know the Score, Have Heart. Um, there's probably a couple more, I'm not sure, but so I was like, "Yo, let me borrow this," and I listened to it, and I'm pretty sure I burned my own copy at home. If you could do that at the time, I don't recall. I don't know if you could like reburn a CD that was already burned, but
I've
I
never
definitely
done
I
a
downloaded it to
reburning.
my Xbox.
Oh,
I
okay.
had an Xbox at the time, the OG Xbox, which sucked, mind you. I hated those. I regretted getting it instead of a PlayStation 2. But anyways,
I think generationally, PS2 was far superior.
yeah,
Like I was an Xbox kid myself, and like I don't know who I would be as a person without things like Combat Evolved and like Halo 2 multiplayer online. But
mhm,
I do, taking a step back, I do see PS2's greater impact than Xbox itself. But again, that's a whole nother tangent, and I'll make sure that we don't just go into original Xbox lore discussion.
That's cool because I could name like 3 games maybe. Soul Reaver on PlayStation though, that was fucking cool.
Mm,
That was a
good
cool one. I
choice.
don't know if you recall that one, but yeah, so I downloaded it to that and I listened to it all the time. But yeah, I remember I had previously heard my first hardcore song ever, which wasn't on that CD, but I heard it one way or another. It was "Full and Who" from Guns Up,
Cool. Okay.
and that was like if one of my friends, rest in peace, Kelly Sloan, he was trying to get me and my cousin and another person or two into hardcore before that. And whatever he played, I don't recall it, so I don't count it. But I just know I just went from hearing like deathcore, like breakdowns, which is like groovy shit,
Yep.
which is easy to occupy like a fucking 13-year-old.
Yeah.
So I heard that all the time, but then he would show me like a hardcore band and all it was like a DB. And so I'm just like, this is kind of boring. But then one day, I heard Full and Who from Guns Up and it was so in your face and it was fast towards the end, but regardless, it was just very in your face.
Mm.
So that's when I was like, okay, this is cool. Eventually I got that CD from my friends, I borrowed it, and I was like, yo, hardcore is sick. This is really cool. I was like, the other shit was cool because like everyone likes a groovy breakdown, but there's something like so sick about how in your face, like straight hardcore can be.
Totally. And I think, a very similar, not similar, but if I'm looking at my own entry in, I definitely came more from that like metal route versus like growing up in the punk scene and then
Mhm.
coming and listening to harder stuff. It was like listening to the extremely hard like stuff that it just is blowing your mind as like a 15, 16, 17-year old. But then when you're introduced into things that are like true hardcore, you're almost like disappointed because you don't understand it because you're just expecting the high production, the crazy double kick, and it's like, oh, like, but all it takes is like one connection point. And I think that
Yeah,
one major connection point for me was listening to Trapped Under Ice. Cause I was like, okay, the production
great one.
isn't like as crazy as some of this other stuff I'm listening to, but like the delivery of these vocals were like so in my face that I couldn't help but like look away, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it became undeniable, and like you started like realize, like for me, I started to, what up, dog?
What up,
Started to
dog?
realize, you know what? I think this is more up my alley than that other stuff.
Mhm.
And at least, and then with this stuff, like with hardcore, unlike that stuff, I didn't like. I guess the right band in deathcore or metalcore, whatever, could have probably had the right lyrics. I just didn't pay attention. But in hardcore, you couldn't help. For me, you couldn't help but to pay attention to like what they're saying.
Mhm.
And it what first showed me that was on that mix CD, Have Heart, and their mix was much louder. So Watch Me Rise just like blared through my speaker really loud. I was like, what the fuck? I had to turn my shit down, but
Yeah.
it was so good, and I was just like mesmerized by how like sad and mad he was, and I was like, oh man, this like is stabbing me in the heart right now. So then I just started paying more attention to how passionate hardcore comes off versus like deathcore or
Mhm.
metalcore or whatever I was listening to at that time.
I
So I was
really, like, don't know how I'm sure it would just be, like, a night and day difference if, like, bands like Have Heart or any bands that had, like, that heavy side, but, like, the melodic nature as far as, like, the why behind the band and the why behind the lyrics. I honestly think that, like, our space would look super different if that like, if it was only melodic or if it was only heavy and it didn't have that
yeah,
blend of the 2. Because I think I totally agree is that either you're reading the lyrics and you're like, "Holy shit, like, people are writing songs about this, like, that's how I feel," or
yeah,
like, "I never thought of things that way."
hmm,
Um, and it's honestly something that I see it's not as valued in the 2022 hardcore society. Like people are like super down with just like the diss tracks and like the FU songs. And I
yeah,
think, there's time and place for both. And I don't expect like a band like Pain of Truth to write this like super inspiring like kind of song. I just want them just to like be like, yo, we're this badass band from Long Island.
right,
But I think it was just it was beyond crucial for like just drawing people in from multiple avenues
Yeah.
into this world, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's just like anything, like it would be so boring if it didn't have diversity. Like,
Hmm.
I hate when people talk shit on like youth crew or whenever they'll talk shit on like I don't want to say metalcore because like I'll sit there and like make fun of it to a degree, but it's just like but like the hardcore bands that are it's still hardcore, but it's got the metalcore sound. Like I
Sure.
want to see both of those at a gig because I don't know, and also like lyrically, a lot of the bands have different. Everyone's got a different style of how they're writing, and like I don't even have to agree with like I don't have to feel the same way as someone else, and I'll sing along with what they're saying because like at one point I felt that same way, but
Hmm.
yesterday I felt that way, but today I feel the complete opposite. But I'm gonna sing along based on how I felt yesterday.
Hmm.
That's how I could probably put that. And it would just be boring if like I hate. But again, the youth crew thing. I hate when people hate on like youth crew because I'm like, bro, you can hate the way like some kid goes to the thrift store to dress up, but like don't hate the music they make, bro. Like youth crew is fucking great. Like if you're hating on that, you're hating on 10 Yard Fight, and I don't like if you're hating on 10 Yard Fight. That's so stupid.
Yeah, like I've always said that there are good bands in every music genre. You just need to put in the work to like to find those. And rightly so, if someone's coming from like they're born and raised on like country music, it might take them years to find like their favorite hardcore band. But if you're
Yeah,
not willing to look, then you'll never know.
right.
And it's like every genre has equally as like good bands as like cheese balls, you know? So like
Yeah,
there's a ton of like really cool death metal bands, like LDB just happened this past weekend, and there's a lot of really cool bands, especially on the after show, that were just getting a lot of like
yeah,
hype, and that was really exciting because I was like, oh, this whole show is just like death metal, and it seems like people were going off and having a blast. So there's those bands in that space, but at the same time, there's equally as cheeseball like death metal bands that are like in other parts of the internet
yeah,
and doing their thing. So I don't think that you can just I think we can all, in a way, talk shit in a very like not constructive is not the right word, but doing it in a way where we're aware that like there's good and bad, and then there's like a lot of gray in between, a lot of like filler. But I think it's fine to poke fun at each other and be like, oh, that's a very thrash thing to do, or that's a
yeah,
very
yeah.
youth crew thing to do, or things like that. But I think without getting too like high and mighty about like
Yes,
my
that's
opinion matters.
yeah, exactly. No, and definitely. I mean, it's if you, I feel like you don't have a life worth living if you can't make fun of yourself.
Mm,
And like and the same with like my shit. I'll make fun of not First Day Out, but Satisfied. But I'm joking because like high school me would have like worshipped that band.
sure.
But and that's also something funny. That's the funniest thing. Luke is like, I don't really be singing like emotional shit. I'm like, dog, have you heard your other band? that's
Yeah, when
my,
he was mentioning on the first date.
that's my one Luke diss.
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly when he was saying in First Day Out, he's like, oh, we don't talk about our feelings a whole lot, and it's like, well,
Because you
maybe
got
not in
another
this
band.
band, but yeah, you got another band that you're doing that. No, shout out to Luke, shout out to First Day
Yeah,
Out,
shout out Luke. Their show tomorrow with Living in Fear, Drain, Zulu, Pain of Truth,
this
Ingrown.
stacked
That shit is
sandwich.
so big. It was so big, and then Zulu needed to get added, and it became even bigger. I was like, yes, this is gonna be so sick. And it's at the Doghouse.
Hmm.
Epic. Every fucking gig that gets announced at our corporate venue, the Masquerade, grinds my fucking gears. I'm like, why don't these agents just hit up my friends or
Right.
me? We will fucking get you most likely the same money. We're definitely gonna make sure it's more fun.
Hmm.
'Cause no one goes to the corporate venues anymore, bro. Like no one likes it. I don't know. Maybe they do somewhere, but I fucking hate it. The old
I
Masquerade was sick, but this new one that we have, you won't ever have to experience it. But just
mhm.
just know old Masquerade, cool. New Masquerade
I feel
sucks.
like there are some bands that do need like we need this multi-hundred cap room. But
Definitely. That's a few and far between, though.
yeah, sure, yeah.
I
But I do
mean,
think that there are some bands that will do like, this was a few years back, but I forget who was on the bill. Oh, Stick to Your Guns was doing a headlining tour with no. It was the other. I can't remember. I just know that like Rotting Out and See You Space Cowboy was like support,
yeah,
and See You Space Cowboy did a DIY friends of mine reached out to them. They did like a they played a set I think the same night, which is crazy. So they like played at like the big boy venue, and then they came over and did this like, in a parking garage kind of like shit,
that's
spray
awesome.
paint everywhere, and people are going off, and they said that they had a better time doing that show than like the big one that,
I would
sold
imagine.
out or whatever. So I think there's something to be said there of like, I think people that run the booking side of things for bands sometimes have to operate in a certain way versus like, "Hey, what's your cool spot?" No one's messaging like the locals there,
Yeah,
because they have different liabilities and all that bullshit. So,
yeah,
you know, DIY is always a better vibe, in my opinion.
yes, always. It always is. I mean, like can't you can have fun at those other gigs, definitely, but it's
Hmm.
just I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's the scene.
Hmm.
It feels like it's a bunch of people from a different place, but it's like you can all just pull up to our DIY venue instead. So let's just like do this
Yeah, yeah.
there.
It's an interesting thing because like the scene, quote unquote, will go to that bigger show. Like in a couple weeks, Cancer Bats, Come Back Kid, and Misery Signals are doing this big Western Canada, and
Okay.
it starts in Eastern Canada, but it comes over, and like I know like all of Calgary hardcore or Alberta hardcore or whatever are going to be rolling to that show, but I also know there's going to be the people that are like, I've never seen this person, and they're wearing a Come Back Kid shirt and just like losing their mind. So it is that weird thing where it's like it is the scene is at that show, but the show is not put on by the scene. And it
Yeah.
becomes like this weird thing of like, yeah, I'm not really sure. It's a weird paradox there for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, the best part about it is at least the bands get paid.
Yes.
But like, I do think they want to have fun while getting paid. I'm not there yet. I'm not a band that big yet. So what do I fucking know?
Hmm.
But that's just I would much rather have fun at the gig I'm playing and get the same amount of money than just I don't know. That's just how I feel. I just see that shit and I'm like, I don't like to feel negative about this, but why is this show happening here?
Right.
We have a perfectly good venue.
I
And there's
always,
also other avenues we have. We have like not my friend's venue, Jordan's, and we have other venues like Yoon. He has his record spot, and he'll gladly put on the right shows there.
mhm.
It's just like, stop hitting up the Masquerade. That place sucks.
I know the first time, if there's one thing that's clear to me, the first time that Endgame plays Atlanta, we're not playing the Masquerade. I'll just say it here on the podcast. No way, Jose.
Promise.
Promise. I'm giving you my fucking pinky for that.
Yeah. But
um,
yeah, let's make that happen at some point. I'm sure we will.
Oh, we absolutely will. I think it's just a matter of time, and I think I think our combined Endgame and Living in Fear chat has declared that the day that that happens, there's just going to be like so many of like the little like LARPy like foam swords, and it's just going to be that for both of our sets.
If that doesn't happen, I'm gonna be disappointed for sure.
It's like I think we were I think we were considering it for our first local show back, but that was like, no, this needs to be with Living in Fear. The first time that we play together, that's when that
Yeah,
happens. Like,
it's definitely got to be.
absolutely. We'll take a little bit of a detour here. I definitely we're definitely gonna be chatting about Strangle You in the new release, but since we're talking about like the southern states and kind of that area of where you reside and the scene
Mhm.
that you're a part of. I think Promcore really opened my eyes to like a bunch of like cool bands from that area. Obviously, like Chattanooga and like Missouri, and just like areas of the states where I'm like literally the opposite. Like being in Western Canada, like I've gone to Florida not for anything hardcore related, but I've never really hit anywhere kind of just north of that,
Mhm.
kind of in that space. So, what do you think? What is one of the biggest like misconceptions or things that is most understood or misunderstood about like the southeast kind of area of American hardcore?
Misunderstood? Um, I don't know. To be honest, I mean, we don't have the we don't have the shows that they have up north, or out west. We don't have those shows as frequently. Um, but I mean, our the kids here are just as hyped. Unfortunately, there's only so many, but shit, Atlanta gets bigger and bigger the more kids that enter college, and they're moving in this way. So I don't actually know how to answer that, to be
Mm.
honest with you. I don't, because I don't know what people assume or not assume.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, it's tough. It's a big question for sure because I think there's a lot of people that can either they'll be told something about like their scene from like an outsider's perspective, or there's just something that you learn. And I think for something for myself in just Western Canada, I think a lot of bands anywhere from Winnipeg to Vancouver can attest to this. That a lot of people just think Canada is like, oh, you're from Toronto, which is like just in Eastern Canada, and it's like a totally different area. Like the amount of times that I've heard from Stepping Stone, hey, can you drive down to this Toronto show? We had a band drop, and it's like we are not in Detroit, or or sorry, I mistold that. When an American promoter will ask them to drive down to like a Detroit or somewhere in Michigan,
Right.
they're like, we are not from Toronto. And so yeah, that's what I was more curious about. If there's anything where it's like people only know us for this sound, or like they think like certain tours might not come here because they might not think that they draw as well, or things like that. And
Um,
I always like to break those um misunderstandings,
right.
I guess. I don't know if that's a word.
Um, I think the best thing I could think of if I had to like force anything was a lot of people that are out of the loop but were in the loop like years ago. They'll think, after Foundation, what good was Atlanta hardcore after that, or Criminal Instinct and Atlanta are the only like good hardcore bands, yada yada. Like we had Dead and Deathbed at one point, which is um a really good band that was there. They're not a monumental band like Foundation, but they were awesome, and that was around Foundation's time.
Mhm.
um you know when those bands went out, my old band was Full Measures. I at the time was a horrible drummer, so we were not the greatest band, but like regardless, the band had passion. And then we had Malicious Wounding, which is I didn't have to be a good drummer for that band because it's like really simple, but it's so good. I don't know if you've heard Malicious Wounding, but like we're getting back together, and our first show back is the Strangle You record release, like the first night.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, just know that band's fucking awesome. And that's coming from
I
me.
might be a little biased, but the band is awesome.
No, I could admit if a band I was in was like not great, but Malicious Tuning was great and is
Fair.
great. I
Respect.
can't wait for people to hear the new music. But anyways, and then we got like Symbio, we got Sterilized. Like there's a lot of good bands in Atlanta that people, and then obviously Living in Fear, First Day Out, Cirrus. Um, there's another band coming out soon, Life of Pain. It's with one of my best friends is in it. But anyways, a lot of sick bands here, but I don't think any of us are as big as, Criminal Instinct, but like the bands are here. People just gotta like pay attention to the city, and like, if they hear new Atlanta hardcore band, go fucking check it out. Chances are it's gonna be great.
Mhm. I Since I grew up in Winnipeg, I remember talking with Adam Dyson from Withdrawal a lot, and it always kind of came down to we might not have the quantity of bands, but we definitely have the quality. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that any smaller scene can really take pride in, is like if you
Hmm.
you have like dope bands, you don't need to have 20. You
Yeah.
might just have 3, and that's cool.
Mhm.
You know, that sets its own level of challenges, but I think I would rather have 3 dope bands that I would like bend over backwards to go see every month or every weekend or whatever, the frequency is, rather than like like 18 duds and 2 good bands that are like
Yeah.
maybe they only play once a year.
Right.
So, I think that's like really important to just like know what you have to work with and like
Mhm.
working with that versus trying to like, I was just in like Los Angeles and it was like there was a Rotting Out gig in San Fernando and then Scow was also playing in Hollywood. And it's like that is their situation. It's borderline a unicorn situation because that's not how most of the rest of the hardcore world actually operates. Like,
Yeah.
if anything, you need to work 10 times as harder to get just an ounce of similar results.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Strangle You, it sounds like there's other bands that are happening right now, but like break down like the idea of Strangle You and like how it started, like and just kind of the formation of that, and then we'll kind of get
Mhm.
into the EP.
So Josh, my original guitarist, which is one of my best friends, he has like, he knows how to work the drum program. So he like whipped up an entire song, just the music, and he sent it over to me and Addison, my best friend, that we had that band Full Measures together, all of us, and Malicious Wounding.
Mhm.
But anyways, he sends it to us. He's like, I don't really think like any of us like are trying to make time to start a band right now, but I wrote this track and I just wanted you guys to hear it. And I was like, this is right up my alley. I was like, I'm gonna throw lyrics over this. We're gonna call it Professional Victim, and we're gonna start a band. And he was like, all right. I was like, cool. Finally, it's my turn to have a mic. So, and then, but before that, Jacob from Tulsa was talking about how he wanted to write a demo, like me and him, because we're boys. We don't see each other hardly ever, but I like him. He likes me. So he was like, dude, we should start a band. It's like, yeah. And then he could never like find the time to write a riff. But I was like, hey man, my boy Josh here wrote this. Do you dig it? And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. He's gonna write more music around this, and we're gonna start a band. We just gotta find some members. So, then we had a couple different people for a little bit. The first two shows was an OG lineup, and after that, it had to dwindle down because Atlanta and Tulsa are not right next door to each other. So but what's cool is no matter how you look at it, the band, at least at the start, was always Atlanta and Tulsa, because first show was Peace of Mind and Stepping Stone came through, and
I
Peace
remember
of Mind,
that tour. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and most of those dudes were in most of the Peace of Mind dudes were in Strangle You. So they got into the city the day of the Atlanta gig, and we all went over the set, and then we went had our first show, which was that one, and then the end of
So wait,
their
wait, sorry to stop you. So your first show, just practice day of and go to the show.
yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, the only thing that was bad about it was me, because I did not expect to blow my vocal cords out so quick. Because I was like, I yell at my steering wheel all the time for practice as a means of practice,
Yep.
but it's different in person, and like, with like live music, and I didn't know. So I got the first like 4 lines down, and then my vocals were gone. So if you ever see the video, I'm not going to tell you where it's at, but if you ever see it, just know the first song and the second song are great. After
And then you
that,
could turn it off.
my, my vocals are gone. You can just turn it off. But musically, though, it was fucking great. Like, those dudes
Mhm.
killed it. Um, but yeah, so that was our first show. And the end of that tour that they all had, Peace of Mind and Stepping Stone, was in Tulsa. So me and Josh flew out to Tulsa. So that was Strangle You's second show. We had to make it that way. I was like, that's what it's going to be.
Mhm.
Originally, I wanted to do like a record release weekend like that. I wanted to try to do like Atlanta, Louisville, and Tulsa, but it's just not in the cards. And, I got 2 bomb ass shows for Atlanta, which only makes sense because the primary lineup is not even Atlanta or Tulsa anymore. My friend Zach Mans moved to LA for a while, and he joined that band Sweet Soul. And
Oh yeah, Sweet Soul sick.
yeah, great band. He
Mhm.
joined them. Well, he moved back this way. He was in a band originally. He was the vocalist for a band called Evade, and he
Okay.
played guitar in a band called Refocus. Well, both of those bands' drummer Justin Campbell, another good friend of mine, he hasn't been in a band since Evade, and Zach just moved back to Nashville. So, or not, he moved back this way. He lives in Nashville. So recently, my guitarist that you saw at Promcore, Harry, not Andre, obviously, but the other dude,
Yeah.
he hit me up like, "Hey man, like I know Strangle's getting really busy." He said, "But like I can't manage to take off work as much as you guys are going to be doing. I hate to do it, but I got to step back." I was like, no worries. Um, I hit them up. I was like, "Hey," I was like, "Listen, I don't know what's going to happen if you guys can't do this, but I wouldn't want it to be anyone else. If I could help it, would you two join Strangle You?" And they were both down, so we're going to make it work.
Mm.
Really excited for that. So yeah, the band at this moment, and I'm not gonna like, we're not gonna like fucking plaster it all over everything, but it's Nashville, Greensboro, Atlanta, and sometimes Tulsa, because sometimes Jacob's not out. You know, Jacob, if anything, Jacob's our graphic designer. I'm
He's
like, "Hey
got
man,
like
look, I really need this for before the the date of blah blah blah," and he'll have something done that's really cool. And I'm like, "Cool,
mhm.
you're still in the band."
Yeah, yeah. So he always has like the backroom key.
Yeah, it's
So
hilarious because he didn't play at our Tulsa show. He was there though. He was moshing, but he wasn't playing with us.
yeah, I guess if you're not playing in the band, better you bet your ass you better be moshing.
Oh yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
of
And
course.
gave me time to breathe. He knew lyrics to songs we haven't released yet that we were playing. I was like, "Oh, thank God!" I gave
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but like it's cool to hear how the band from day one was not like a long distance project, but it was like we have members that are more than an hour's drive of one another.
12 plus.
And if anything, it's gotten more crazy because now there's 3 cities in the mix versus just Tulsa and Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah. But luckily it works this way because
Yeah.
and especially with these two new dudes because they're both so the dude that plays the drums like hits me up the day after I was like, "Hey, will you join? Hey man, learn the set." I'm like, "I just talked to you like 12 hours ago." "Yeah, I know, I got it. Like I got it down." I'm like, "Okay, fuck yeah, let's go."
There is nothing better than being able to jam with people that can, like, just pick shit up. Nothing
Yeah.
is worse than being like well, I've been in bands with people that are like, they're just like, "Oh, I don't have time," or, like, they just, like, straight up won't do it, and that's a whole one thing, but then, like, having it where when Endgame got our newest bass player, Dan, he was like, I think he had like a couple day, like maybe a week's notice, and he learned all of our discography and just needed like the where does my hand go for this part, and that was it. I'm like, you're like, we just said you were gonna fill in, but just off of that, I want to be in a band with you. And then he joined the band later on.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
Fun fact about Living in Fear.
Hmm.
uh, Kurt needed a guitarist at one point. He was down a guitarist, and Andre hits him up. Don't they met? I think they met once. I'm not for sure, but he already knew their old drummer Sam, and he hits up Kurt. He's like, "I could be in your band," and he's like, uh, okay, can you like send me a video of you playing a song?" And he's like, "Yeah," and I'm pretty sure it was like the next day or an hour or so later he sends like 3 different videos of like 3 songs total. I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure Kurt told him like, obviously I can't quote them word for word, but I'm pretty sure Kurt said, "Look, man, we need like a shredder for this band, please, because like I have one guitarist, yeah, but I need someone that can shred while he's doing the other stuff." And Andre as far as Andre has told me, and I could like misquote him a little, but he wasn't really the solo guy.
Mm.
But as you know now, he is the solo guy. So he's like, "Ah, all right," and then he fucking taught himself. Not that he taught himself, but he practiced harder. And that dude's just, dude, he awesome. He comes in clutch. He was filling in for us for a while because our guitarist here, Brett, got in a bad motorcycle accident.
Mm.
And so while he was recovering, Andre was willing to do it. Andre went and bought a specific guitar to play and Strangle You for a few months. Later
Yeah,
on, he
the
went.
Flying V Washburn is probably not going to cut it for Strangle You stuff.
Hey, it looked cool, but
It would
that's
it would look
the beat.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like I again going back a little bit earlier in our conversation, just like being able to work with the people. I think you need to rely on your scene that much more when you know when you're down a member and you got like a show and having it's cool to be able to like it's cool to be able to have like two or three people that that if you were in a pitch that someone could like come clutch, like listen to your set list on their fucking iPhone or iPod, whatever tech they got, and make it to the show and at least play it. It might not be perfect, but the
Yeah.
fact that the show can always go on, it's like one of my favorite things about hardcore. It's just like how unpolished and unperfect it is. And in my opinion, it makes it that much more special.
Yeah, I agree. Now, like if we get off beat, like D beat wise, that's where it's a problem. Like there's been a couple times where like I wouldn't be on beat with like Kurt and he's doing a D beat or something. I'm like, oh fuck, I am fucking this whole thing up so bad right now. But then I'm in my head like, well, is he going faster or slower though? Because I feel like he's going slower. And oddly enough, it's so much harder to like keep up with it the slower the drums are for certain, like for when you have as many words as I throw on a D beat.
Right.
But I mean, Kurt is like one of the sickest drummers I know. So I'm glad to have him fill in from time to time. I'm hoping I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I feel it's funny because originally he wanted to, like it started around the start of COVID, he had joined like three of our band or four of our bands, and mine being one of them. He's like, yo man, I kind of want to be in Strangle You full time, like promo pics and all. I was like, for real? He's like, yeah. And I was
Promo
like,
pics and
oh.
all.
And then a little while later, he was like, hey man, I only want to focus on Living in Fear. I'm like, I can't be mad at you, but god damn it. And I was like, I need you for a couple shows though.
Yeah, like I think everyone probably overcommitted to stuff during peak pandemic times because
Oh
there
yeah,
was nothing to do, right? Like I think I was
nothing.
doing 3 podcasts a week and
But
I can barely do 2 at this point. Like it's bananas. But yeah, it is cool like to be able to have people in your court to be able to do stuff. Um and I also like being able to, pull people back on stage to do like one-off kind of things, even if it's just a song. Like, Endgame unfortunately has had we've had great drummers, except for one dude who I will not mention because he sucks. But all of our good drummers have been like, yeah, like come up and do a song in the middle of like we'll do the old switcheroo, and then like I want to do a show that like has the drummers that we like all come on stage with like floor toms like for like one part of our song.
yeah,
So
of course, why not?
that shit is always like super cool to be able to be like, and I think it's almost like not necessary, but it's like that thing where hardcore people or hardcore bands don't have to do this like super PR like so and so's not in the band. This like
Yeah, you
person
don't have
like
to do
you
that.
could just do a new promo pic and it's like, "Oh, okay, that's who's in the band now."
Right.
But it's like being able to like call back to that to show that like, there's no bad blood or anything is a good
Yeah,
thing too.
definitely. Chris Rennie, he has a studio, Shell Shock Audio in New York. He drums in Jab and Pain of Truth. Um, Whenever we first was getting everything recorded, um, there's like a complication with Jacob having time with our drummer at the time, getting him recorded. So I hit up Chris. I was like, man, I know you record for a living. I was like, it's probably it's probably very random to ask you to do this, but would you record yourself drumming for our EP, our demo and EP? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I'll pay you, whatever makes sense. He gave me the bill and he got it done. And then also for this record, he did that because by this point I was kind of out of a drummer
Mm.
at the moment. I just, had to scab everything, but I was just like, yo, I want you to record again. So it's the same consistency and I'll deal with everything later. So yeah, he's on it. And now that Jab's playing our record release, I'm pretty sure we're all gonna like huddle in a circle and like have him, and then maybe Mark. I don't know for sure, but Mark Valentino, that's also in Jab. They're probably both gonna like get on the drums and guitars at one point to like play a song. I'm not for sure yet, but we always joke about if that day ever comes, and now that day seems to be coming. So yeah, it'll be pretty funny if they jump up for a song.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I have to pee.
All right.
You should honestly keep "I have to pee" in there,
Okay, I'll keep that
and
in.
then like you know whatever after that.
Hard cut.
You know what you're doing. Hard cut. That's the words.
Yeah. Just insert the SpongeBob like a few moments later.
You should do that.
There's, I trying to keep it as a serious music podcast, but I just can't help myself.
And
So yeah, so we've learned a little bit about how Strangle You came to be, and how the band operates and the way that it does now with people all over the place. Let's talk about the new record that you put out. So the Only Solution came out a month ish ago,
something like that.
something like that.
It's supposed to be the 15th. It didn't hit Spotify till the 16th, so I just didn't talk about it until the 16th. I was like, yes, god damn it.
The anxiety in my body whenever I'm sending things off to the streaming gods is like, because I'm a control freak. I need to be able to like see the draft on Bandcamp so I know it's like, okay, it's there. I can publish it. And it's like you don't know if it's actually gonna be on streaming until that day.
Yeah.
And it's like I feel like there should be a way to be able to kind of like preview it in a sense, but it's not the way the world is.
I just don't understand why it's not like Bandcamp, where you can just literally you have your own fancy little login. And I mean, I get there's technical reasons why with contract licenses, whatever. But I'm just like, bro, why can't I just go in there and go, boom, you're there the day I say you are? That's just so stupid. It should all be like Bandcamp. But also Bandcamp, who uses Bandcamp? Like we put our stuff on there, but I'm like, who uses this?
Mm-hmm.
And like once every like, I don't know, like couple months or something, I'll see like a cha-ching, someone bought Problem, $5. I'm like, dude, it's on there for free. Why do you don't have to give me $5?
Yeah, I think it's just for posterity at the end of the day, because I notice when a band has like, oh, you don't have your latest record or EP on your Bandcamp because maybe it's on a bigger label and maybe there's just like maybe there's a legal thing there, or maybe they just genuinely forgot about it.
Right.
But I do think it is just weird when you're like, I put this up for free. I think the utility of it is dope, that you can like record a sick demo in a day, slap some artwork together and post it. I think that's huge. And it's just strange when you just toss it up there for the sake of it, because like we live in the streaming world, but then people will still buy it and support it.
Yeah. Where do you live? But I also like appreciate it. I appreciate the money. I'm glad someone likes my band enough to pay for it. But
right.
I mean, the only thing I put up there for money was this record, because I'm like, I gotta make something somehow. Like, we already like, I mean, we obviously make money off of merch, but why not? Why not for this one? But I don't know. I like Bandcamp mostly for lyrics, but also Spotify is now starting to show lyrics as long as the person puts it up, like uploads it. I guess I don't really know how that works. I'm not the one that throws everything on Spotify, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking now, because when Endgame did our new single, I don't think I uploaded any of the lyrics, which I don't know if it auto generates it. I think you have to auto submit it, because if you're just saying some sus like racist shit, I don't think they're just going to be like,
yeah,
no worries.
Throw that up there.
Yeah. So talk to me about the only solution. Like, obviously there's some like returning favorites that you guys released a little earlier in 2021. And yeah, just tell me about like the why behind the record and what you're most proud of about.
For sure. So we played LDB pre-show last LDB, not last year, but
2020. Wait, yeah. 2020.
Yeah, it was 2020. Same year as the start of it all. But Tyler Short came up, and he was like, he had already known we were a band and he was stoked to check it, but just like me, most of the time he's not going to check something out unless it's like his immediate friends or he sees it first. But even though our set was, I felt like it was kind of sloppy that night because we got added like pretty last second because Stepping Stone had a drop.
Right.
But
Hmm.
anyways, he liked us a lot, and he comes up to my merch table and he's like, "Yo, let me get a shirt." And I was like, "Of course." And then he's like, "Also, who's putting out y'all's next record?" And I was like, "You are." He was like, "Cool, let me put out your next record." I'm like, "Yeah, like please." I never thought anyone was gonna hit me up going, "Let me put out your record." You're
Hmm.
doing it, so let's go. And so then COVID hits, and dude, also our last show as COVID hits was any show that happened that night was the last hardcore show until shows started back up again. Fun fact: it
Hmm.
was us, Living in Fear, No Option, Perfect World. There could have been another band, but I'm not entirely sure. But
No
yeah,
Option is a band that I have not heard. Like that is not that's a band that hasn't in my radar. I know they're doing stuff, but like they
yeah,
were
I think they're
doing a
getting.
lot of shit, at
They
that time.
were, yeah, at that time. But so, anyways, I was like, well, I was like, I definitely don't want to put out music right now because I felt like we're not big enough, and putting it out might get slept on when I want to be like, well, I don't know. That's just how I viewed it. I kind of regret that looking back, but then again, I say that, but I'm also satisfied that it's now out. So who fucking knows with me? I don't know. But anyways, so we started working on it. We were like, what should we do? Should we do an LP? Should we do another 5 song? And we then after getting the right one, I was like, maybe two more, or like maybe one more. And I was like, maybe two more. That's so we decided to leave it with 7. We wrote Against Your Grain. That was one of the first songs. And I was
Mhm.
like, this song is so fucking good, in my own opinion. I didn't write the music, so I'm just talking about the music. I'm praising the music here, not
I
myself.
think that's the first song that I've heard from you guys, and that's what caught my attention. I was like, "Yo, this musically is cool, and the lyrics are like adding something else." But go on.
Appreciate that. So wrote that, and then at one point I was just like, it was still Josh who recorded or wrote everything previous. And then I was like, yo, let's write a sad song. I was like, I don't know how you're supposed to make music that sounds sad for Strangle You, but like try to do it. And so that's how we came up with Never Whole. And I was like, now what the fuck do I sing in this song? I was like, I don't know what to say, but I don't want to just like any of my songs could like I was like, this one has to be like something insanely personal.
Mhm.
And then I didn't know where to fucking start. So I just wrote down I got no direction. So I guess that's where I'll go. And at that time, I was like really beefing my dad. Was going through some shit. Because the older you get, you just kind of realize shit that went through growing up, and realize. I mean, like my dad didn't do anything horrible. It's just like he minimized what I went through in someone else's household.
Mm.
So I had not been talking to him. Which was weird because we always talked before him, but I was just like going through it. And so, anyways, the first sentence started it all where I was literally writing, I don't know what to write about. But wanted to the last EP Problem. It's called Problem because the most personal song that I had written at that time was the song Problem. So I was like, let's just call it Problem. And then I wrote this song and called it Never Whole. And so for a long time, we were going to call this Never Whole. But then I was like, I think like after all the dark thoughts I just had throughout writing this whole thing, I was like really thinking about doing something I shouldn't do. So I wrote I was like, let's just call it The Only Solution, because I say that in that song. Like the only solution for me to feel satisfied is if I fucking put one right through my fucking head. So that's why I decided to call it that. And I
Guys.
sometimes I look back and I'm like, why didn't I just name that song The Only Solution? But I don't know. I think Never Whole fits it more. But anyways, so yeah, the music was written just whatever he was
Guys.
thinking that day, except for that one song. I said, hey, make it sad. the only other song that I can say was like uh the creative choice was requested was Stranglelude. I was rocking Beastie
Epic.
Boys.
Sorry, epic song name.
Thank you. Thank you.
Big
Um
fan of that.
I'm glad. I was listening to an old New York hardcore band called Vietnam, and not old. I don't know what era they were in exactly, but late. They're like late '90s, early 2000s, I think. But I don't know. I'm not checking. Anyways, I was listening to Vietnam and a lot of Beastie Boys, and I was like, "Yo," I was like, "Write a song similar to this without ripping this song." And then an hour later, Stranglelude. And so, and I had wrote the lyrics the night before. I was like, I'm gonna write in this song like I'm Mr. Tough Guy, but it's just having fun. I was like, I'm writing this shit like fucking as hip hop oriented as I could possibly be, which is not very. But I was like, I'm gonna sound ridiculous on this track. So Malicious Wounding's vocalist is gonna hop in on this one.
Gotcha.
So the band Malicious Wounding, as heavy as it is, the vocals you hear on Stranglelude, that's what the vocals sound like in Malicious Wounding.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's heavy, but it's got bounce and vibe
Yeah.
to it. Cool.
Yeah. I would say this is really weird, and I'm not trying to talk about Malicious Wounding other than this, but for fans of Disembodied and E-Town Concrete, I know that sounds weird, but if you hear it, you'll get it.
Okay. So E-Town bodied, some combo like that.
You can play around with it however you want.
No, I think, first off, let me say, appreciate you just being open and talking about, very personal stuff when it comes to the lyrics. I always found
real quick, I'm so sorry. I think it's important too, because who I was at that moment isn't necessarily who I am at this moment. And I just think if someone hears that, I don't care how cliche it sounds to like talk about suicide. I think sometimes it comes off like it, but someone out there is going to hear it and see that you cut through all the bullshit and you're doing okay.
Mhm.
So maybe they should also work through the bullshit and just get to better days, because they will come. You just gotta try your best to be patient. So yeah, that's why I say that.
No, yeah. I think that's beautifully said, and I think,
Appreciate it.
I've always struggled at times with vocalists because I feel like a huge goal of mine with this podcast is to, like, actually just be the best interview heavy music platform that I can be, and when I was growing up looking for interviews from some of my favorite artists, some of the questions would just be, like, the most mundane, like, tropes that you would hear, and especially with lyricists and vocalists, it would be like, which song means the most to you? And like some people do want to talk about that, and some people are like, oh, can you just ask me about like something, like I like to play video games. Can we talk about that? So I think it's like always kind of like I'm kind of going through the waters at times when I have like a vocalist with a band, and I don't want to use that as like a go-to question, but more so see if like, oh, do
Yeah.
they give a fuck about what they write about? Okay, let's go there.
Yeah, I don't know who I can't listen to a band and know they like I can't always listen to a band and know they mean it or not. I respect when people are just like, let's not talk about that. I
Mhm.
mean, I kind of sometimes I wish I were that way, but like I'm really not that fucking mysterious.
Yeah. And maybe let me clarify, it's not that someone who's on a podcast who doesn't want to talk about their lyrics doesn't give a fuck about their music. It's just like there's more layers to it than just like, and maybe it's just a personality type. Maybe they're just like a little bit more keen to talk about different things versus like, I wrote this at a dark place in my life, or like this song is about, like positivity or whatever it is. So, but no, it really, I, going back to what you were saying about like not knowing how to start a song and just like actually just write like, I think the hardest thing with anything music wise is just like starting. And I think once
Yeah.
you record that first riff, do the 4 count in, write the first couple sentences, then it's just momentum that builds, and then
Yeah.
the song takes care of itself.
Yeah, I literally had to trim that song up afterwards. I was
Mhm.
like, okay, what makes sense to say, what doesn't? And that song, I don't know if you like can remember off the top of your head, but like I switched who I'm talking to in that song. Like at first I'm like, I'm talking to my dad, and then I like switch to like just looking at like anyone that I've ever like hurt in my past, and like I'm apologizing for letting them down.
Mhm.
And I don't know, that song was very fun for me to write. After I got it out, I was it was definitely a huge weight off my shoulders.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know, a lot of fun. But at first, it was so frustrating because I that song specifically, I couldn't figure out what to write for at least 3 weeks, and then I finally had the first sentence written down,
Mhm. But
and then
again, to the point that we're talking about, once you had that first sentence down, everything
yeah,
just flowed from that, right?
mhm, definitely,
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, like, I'm having flashbacks to other people that have come on the podcast where it's like, it's okay to write a bad song. It's okay to, like, write something that you, like, look back or like, "Ugh, glad that we didn't
yeah,
throw that on Bandcamp or send it off to streaming or whatever." But I do think it's about actually just, like, getting it out of your head and out of your body and just, like, putting it out on paper,
mhm,
in your DAW. And I just think it's important, like, to just, like, output versus trying to, like, have a bit of a barrier there.
yeah.
Yeah. So, a couple other questions came in before we start to wrap up. So, what's obviously Atlanta Braves was very present with a lot of the Atlanta bands playing promcore. Lots of merch.
Yeah.
Um, you're a fan, I'm guessing.
If I watch sports, I certainly would be.
That's fair. One of my questions was like, which baseball team does the Atlanta Braves have the most beef with?
Ask Luke. I
Ask
have
Luke.
no idea. I feel like he'll know, or any of my other friends, not me.
Mhm.
I'm fucking Patrick Star, man. I live under a rock with a lot of things.
That's fair.
I wish I had a more exciting answer there, but I don't. No idea.
Are you a Patrick Star SpongeBob fan?
When I grew up, that shit. I mean, that shit. Yeah, fuck yeah, yeah. That shit's hilarious. You kidding me? That shit's so funny.
I think it's set meme culture up for success in our
Yeah,
world.
it absolutely has.
It's come up 2 times on this podcast, so I don't the
What
writing is
else
on the
has
wall
come
there.
up 2 times on your podcast?
I don't
Hardcore.
know. Hardcore. Definitely hardcore. Um, do you have a favorite SpongeBob character? I'm trying to ask you a couple questions before I just hard into another totally different topic.
I
So
don't
I'm
like
not
that.
trying to.
I would assume. I feel like it's SpongeBob, but also I think this is so cliche, man. I think we all realize that we are Squidward the older we get.
That is the most true statement.
So, but also there's Plankton. Poor guy.
Hmm. I feel
Missing.
like I feel more bad for Plankton as I grow up versus like despising him as a kid.
Yeah, me too.
I'm like, he's just trying to run a business. Like the way that he's going about it is maybe like a little shady, trying to copy
Yeah,
someone else's shit. But like, m- Plankton's got to eat. He's got to make
Plankton's
his
got it.
bread.
That's true.
It's true. It's true. Okay, Kamen, this is the actual big hero topic that I need to talk to you about.
Go for
Anyone
it.
that knows you knows that you have
Oh god damn it.
a reverse vertical that is to
Uh-huh.
be noted. So we have to break down the origin of
The origin of the backflip.
the backflips, because it's not like you just went to a show and just out of pure
Yeah.
joy just flipped your entire body upside down. But were you a trampoline kid growing up? Did you aspire to have one and
Um,
never got one? Are you a
Brody King.
flatlander through and through?
Brody King, my hero, dude that is in hardcore and actually followed his dreams of becoming a wrestler. When I was little, that's all I fucking wanted to do. Me and my cousin would wrestle on the trampoline. Rey Mysterio was my fucking guy. Rey Mysterio and Goldberg, totally different,
Okay.
totally different stature and everything. But Goldberg was sick. But fucking Rey Mysterio, Juvi 2 Guerrero. I probably said his name horribly wrong. Eddie Guerrero, all those dudes. But the fucking cruiserweight division. Those motherfuckers flipping off of anything and everything. That shit was so cool to me.
Mm.
And anyways, there's these dudes I went to elementary school with. They were a little older than me, and I hated being in my house during all hours at the time. But so I would just hang out with them outside, and they would do. I could do like a round off into a back handspring, and they could do like everything. So I just kept. At the time, you're indestructible. You can't hurt yourself. Like you're not gonna break a bone somehow. You just. So I just kept trying, and eventually I just started going like getting straighter and higher. So I don't know. I just been doing backflips since I was a little kid, and
Okay.
sometimes it just feels natural to do it, like mid song or whatever. So, no, like anyone that can't do it can like, try to talk shit like, oh, what a show off. But it's like, dude, it's like a part of the mosh for the people that can do it.
Dude, anybody that could like have the confidence to like do it, because like I think for myself, I would need to like really practice before I'm just bringing that to a show. But like for someone like yourself, or I think of like someone like Seb in a band called Regulate, who can like do that on the dime, like
Yeah.
it's who would not do that? Who would
Yeah.
not
Who would do
flex
that?
that?
Yeah. That motherfucker is so athletic.
Yes. I think when he was on the podcast, he was like, "I might be the most athletic person in hardcore," and I was like, "Hey,
That's sick. I
that's
love that
that's
he owns
you
it.
declaring that, not me." But I
Yeah.
would
Hey,
back it.
I would back it too. I would agree. He
Yeah.
definitely.
So for all the people aspiring, to learn about a backflip, not like you're the backflip master, but what is a piece of advice you would give when it comes to the flips as far as
Um,
practicing,
so
execution, things to avoid?
there's like two ways that you can get better at it, and it's if you do a round off, which if everyone knows what it is, it's like a cooler version of a cartwheel. It's
Okay.
like you kind of twist with it, and it helps you get this like extra spring.
Mm.
It's like some velocity shit. I don't fucking know. Anyways, you can do that, or if you just want to stand still and do it to practice your backflip, what I would do when I was practicing that way, I would just like kind of do it like very sideways, and it gradually got like straighter. So
Gotcha.
I really hate this part of the interview. I'm just kidding. No, that's totally fine. Maybe someone puts that to use.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all I got
I
for
I
that.
I, I think it's like definitely pit and stage dive antics. It's like a branch of way of just being able to do an entire backflip yourself. Um, so yeah, I feel like if you can get some of those things and work towards, Rome wasn't built in a day, backflips weren't built in a
Sure.
day either. So, maybe the last question that I can ask you on this topic,
Okay.
we've said Seb. Is there anyone else in the backflip game that you want to shut out?
I don't know. There was that really, really, really jacked dude at FYA that was on like a Hate 5-6 clip that did a backflip and then he kept moshing. Shout out, I guess. I mean, I saw some people talking shit, but everyone's gonna talk shit whenever they, anyone else gets spotlight in anything. I mean, it
Mhm.
wasn't that deep, but shout out to that dude. He was just having fun.
It's this I don't know if you saw Kamen, but Jessa and I are doing a separate style of podcasting to kind of cover more like timely things in hardcore and have it be just more like free flowing conversation. And something that we're gonna do for our second episode is talk about LDB and the fact that that was one of the very first times that it was like streamed to people that weren't there.
Yeah.
And this is just a little bit of a precursor because we're gonna record this tomorrow,
Mhm.
and it could be out before this interview even. But talking about how people will talk shit once the videos are posted. Once, I post the set or
Yeah.
Sunny or whoever. But the thing with LDB 2022 is that because of the direct feed, people were talking shit the minute that they heard something they didn't like, or like, when they saw something you didn't like. And that to me is I don't know if that's good, bad, some twisted thing in the middle. But it's definitely something that her and I are gonna try to flesh out and be like, who are these people that like are tuning in to watch bands and then just being like, I can talk shit immediately. Cause like when you're at the fest and that happens, you have like time to digest and you're like, oh, that's not as big of a deal or whatever. But for people to have their keyboard warrior shit like ready to go, that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah, it's that's pretty goofy. People always talking the most in hardcore are the ones that are not doing anything with anything at all. And so, they're kind of irrelevant and they'll stay that way
mhm.
until they decide to, change their attitude and maybe do something. So, I don't know. Kind of get bummed anyone has like no one's has yet to like talk some off the wall shit about like my band. Like I don't know. I was expecting the professional victim when we first came out. I was expecting someone in some random part of the world that or the country really just to be like mad at it and make it about them somehow.
Mhm.
And it didn't happen, but maybe one day.
I have found that usually what it's being someone is upset about, there's 9 times out of 10, it's something that it's like the least thing that you would expect. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
maybe they'd be mad about this." And it's like, it's actually this. And you're like, "What the like, this is so insignificant in my band's
yeah.
existence," but you're hyper focusing on that, and that just makes you look like a big old dummy. So,
Yeah, I the other day we played and we were about to play End Times and we were playing with Contention
mhm.
and I shouted out Contention. I said they're on tour in Trump's America. They were on tour in Biden's America, and that's a fucked up America. I was just pointing out gas prices suck, and like the last dude sucked, and this dude sucked, and some art punk chick got so mad and like walked out. So that happened, but I don't know. And as far as I know, like her and her friends were like enjoying us, as far as it seemed. And then suddenly I heard like what, and then like next thing I know, like they were gone, and I was like sick. Probably didn't listen to a word I said.
Right.
Just heard Trump's America and thought that I was like rooting for fucking Trump or something. Like he ain't even in office anymore, and I wouldn't either way. I hated him. I hated Biden. I hate Biden. I hope they both die tomorrow. That'd be sick.
Yeah, I just think it's like I think one of the last things that we can hit on here is that like a hardcore event has like the varying there's fluctuations of like when a band is playing, it's like it's their moment, it's their time to say their piece, whether like whatever that is. Because some people do want to say a bunch of political things, some people don't. Some people have like a hot take. It's just it's a convoluted thing, but it's like it's their time. And as someone who films shows, it's like, yeah, it's like their time. And like, I'm not going, unless it's something super fucked up, I'm not going to like stop recording, walk
Yeah,
out. But some people have taken those liberties of like, I'm right. Like, the things that I believe can never be challenged or questioned, or
yeah,
like no development can, on this thought process or this idea can form. And then it just becomes like, are you a part of the community? Or are you just like passively like are you a part of the community or are you just here as like your own like lone hero when it comes to hardcore? Because for
yeah,
me, hardcore has never been a lone hero activity. It's always been like collaborative, being able to have conversations with people. And some people, I think, in the last couple of years have just had this idea that it's everything is supposed to bend and abide to them, unfortunately.
yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know. They'll, some will come, some will go.
Yep.
So no sweat off my back.
100%. Kamen, this has been a great chat, bro. The email notification is probably a good, indicator that we can start to wrap up. I'm giving you a hard time because we were trying to figure this out before we hit record. The last section of the podcast that I always ask every guest is a favorite mosh story that you would like to share. And that could be
um,
anything that's first to your head, could be bad, ugly, super funny, super wholesome, whatever is first to the dome is how we start to wrap up.
I've never been knocked out before in my life. And United Blood 2016 kicked straight to the dome during King 9. And it was definitely the Art of War. I woke up like 5 minutes later at the bar area of that venue. Everyone like giving me like, a cup of water. And
Mhm.
I'm just like so confused with my friends who are there. I'm like, oh, you came this way to visit me? Like, Kamen, what are you talking about? We're at United Blood. I was like, whoa, whoa. I was like, we're at United Blood Festival, and they're like, yeah. And I was like, oh. And I was like, is Josh here? Which is, that girl's like boyfriend, my best friend, Josh. She's like, no, Cayman, he's not here, but me and everyone else. And then I was like, oh, and I don't know, that was crazy. I was just knocked out. If you find that video after that song, you see I'm wearing like yellow chubby shorts, and you see me, and then suddenly you see yellow shorts down and some legs, and then
Oh, okay.
and it was right around the time that video came out. He needs some milk, so everyone's like backing up. They're picking me up, and someone straight up is like, "Yo, he needs some milk," and the whole fucking venue left. That was awesome. I had a
Wow.
headache for like 2 days after that, and my work, they didn't make me stop working, but they told me for like the next 2 months I was insanely loopy, and I had
Mm.
no idea.
Well,
But I
getting
wasn't
your
gonna go to
shit
the hospital.
getting your shit rocked at King 9 checks out.
Yeah.
That like, and I've only gotten to see that band once, and that was one of the most it was the best display of toxic masculinity that I've ever seen. It was just like
Okay.
bunch of boys with their shirts off, violently moshing, and
Salty Spittoon.
salty spittoon. That's right. But yeah, that's wild that it had such an effect on you when it comes to your
Yeah,
work and everything.
that was crazy. I worked at the call center at that time, so it was definitely worse than it could be like right now. Because right now, like what I do for the company is totally different. I mean, I still talk on the phone, but it's like I call the person. I'm not thrown off. I get the email and I'm like, okay, and I call the person. So
Mhm.
I go in prepared. So it's like in a sense scripted, but it's scripted in a call center too. But it's like they're calling me, so I don't know.
Mhm.
I didn't know I was loopy. Bottom line, um, but two things that I'm gonna mention.
Please.
Don't know when this will be out, but regardless, um, March 18th, Chattanooga with Hesitate. March 19th, Gary, Indiana with Hesitate. Detroit, March 20th with Hesitate. And then Philly, March 21st. And not to mention the sickest show I've ever booked in my fucking life. Um, Strangle U's record release, April 22nd, is Surus, Fool's Game, Symbiote, Malicious Wounding. And then April 23rd is Life of Pain. You'll hear the demo soon enough. Gum, Jab, Living in Fear, Constraint, Bitter End.
Very dope.
Very proud of them. I can't fucking wait.
And Cayman, let's do you a solid, and we'll make sure that this podcast is out before those shows happen versus afterwards. So
Oh,
do you a
cool. I
solid
didn't.
because I
All
love
right.
you
So you're saying
and
now?
I've enjoyed this. Yeah, we'll put it on Friday.
Damn, look at you. That's cool. All right, big bet.
Big bet. And yeah, dude, this has been a fun chat. I feel like it all started when my little band did a little split with Living in Fear, and now I've just gone to meet and connect with so many dope dudes from the Atlanta area, and shout out to anybody in like the southern states that I got to meet at Promcore. I feel like what you guys are doing with Strangle You is very, very dope, and really appreciate you making time and coming on the podcast to shoot the shit with me. This was really, really fun.
I appreciate it. I was getting FOMO, man. I didn't want to know more. I'm just kidding, but I am very grateful that you wanted me on. I appreciate it.